this is a war that Israel can't afford. No, don't need it. Israel is going to be a nation that's going to be in a perpetual state of conflict from now on. Those people are homeless. That's costing money Israel doesn't have. The conflict will be external and internal. 1/3 of the population has left Israel never to return because Israel's not a sustainable place to live. But what happens when half of the Jews leave? Israel can't win the war, and Hamas can't win the war. We made a mistake going into Gaza. And remember, we're in a situation where Israel can't win the war, and Hamas can't win the war. Hamas is not militarily capable of defeating Israel. Hamas wins by not losing. That's the reality of it, especially when Israel publicly says the goal and objective is the physical destruction of Hamas as a military military capability. That means that Israel fails as long as Hamas is resisting. Hamas can make life hell for the Israelis, and they are. As you mentioned, Israel made a mistake going into Gaza. And remember, the mistake Israel made was the mistake that Hamas wanted them to make. The whole purpose of October 7th was to lure Israel into an environment that it wasn't prepared to fight in. Israel, we go back to Christopher Cavoli talking about you couldn't imagine the scope and scale of the fighting in Ukraine from a Western perspective. For the last 2 years, Israel ran major war games that were predicated on Israel being stress tested, meaning that everybody that could attack Israel would attack Israel at once. And what could Israel do to not only defend itself, but to prevail? Now, Israel lost both of these war games because they got overwhelmed. But primarily they got overwhelmed by Hezbollah, and they got overwhelmed by Iran. Those were two problem sets that Israel didn't have the means to resolve. But as Israel shaped this war game, and now I'm being attacked by a cat, shaped this war game, it never once imagined Hamas being a major combatant problem. What Israel viewed Hamas as sort of a enhanced intifada. I'm being attacked. I'm being outflanked right now. The dog has distracted me with his barking, and the cat is now maneuvering to say hello to lunatic, and we're going to say cat, but wrong time and place. Israel didn't imagine Hamas doing what it did. Israel didn't have a plan, didn't have an op plan to put 300,000 troops into Gaza and engage Hamas the way they're engaging. So what Hamas did is disrupt the entire Israeli military posture strategically. First of all, they humiliated the Israelis, humiliated them. They proved that Israel's intelligence is absurd. So Israel is now going into Gaza blind. All of the intelligence that they used to have about Gaza has been removed. Now they have to go in blind with a plan they're making up as they go along. They had no existing plan for large-scale operations in the Gaza Strip. And so now they're going in, they have to mobilize troops that weren't intended to be mobilized for Gaza, which means they aren't available when Hezbollah starts ratcheting up the pressure in Lebanon. So Israel comes in, they only have one mode, and that is punishment. We know that the Israeli Dahiwa doctrine, dating back to 2006, where they bombed the West Beirut suburb of Dahiwa, punishing collective punishment. Hamas knew that's what was going to happen. They wanted it to happen. They wanted Israel to come in and drop bombs and destroy the infrastructure of Gaza. Why? Because once you do that, you can't stay there. Hamas doesn't exist above ground. Hamas exists below ground. And now you've made the above ground, this jungle of concrete and twisted steel that is impossible to maneuver in if you're maneuvering above ground. So Israel withdrew. Hamas then reemerges from below ground, reestablishes itself in anticipation of Israel returning. So they establish ambushes, explosive ambushes. They have sniper positions. They have built new tunnels. The best case is that Israel has addressed, the United States says maybe 35% of the Hamas tunnel network Israel's dealt with. I don't think I think that's overly optimistic. I think Hamas has more capacity. But even then, we're so long into this war, and Israel hasn't solved the tunnel problem. Those tunnels still exist. The Hamas fighters still exist. They're coming up, reasserting their control over Gaza, and now Israel has to go back. It doesn't mean that Hamas is going to rout the Israeli army, but the Israeli army is dying the death of 1,000 cuts. It's becoming politically unsustainable for the Israeli army to stay in Gaza. It's demoralizing them. They're becoming less and less efficient. Nobody wants to serve anymore. Nobody wants to go in there. And as morale collapses, combat efficiency collapses, which means you're not doing the patrolling. When you set in for the night, you're taking shortcuts because you're demoralized. Hamas isn't demoralized. They're taking advantage of it. Ambush, destroyed tanks, killed Israelis. This is the reality of it. Hamas isn't going to, capture 300,000 Israelis who are going to surrender overnight. What Hamas is going to do is make it impossible for Israel to politically continue a war that they can't win. That's the goal. That's the objective. And that's the direction that Hamas is in. Hezbollah is the same thing up north. Hezbollah has created a situation where the Israelis can't win. The danger with Hezbollah, though, is if Israel tries to win, tries to do an Operation Litani 2 and push Hezbollah back to the Litani River, Hezbollah has the ability actually to counterattack and take the fight into northern Israel, into Galilee. And it's a fight that Israel today can't win because all the resources they need to fight that fight are down in Gaza. And then there's the whole ballistic missile thing, the missile defense shield that Israel thought was in place to handle a 2006 type offensive, but Hezbollah's weapons have been upgraded. Now Iran's come into the mix, and Iran showed that it has missiles that could defeat the Israeli and American ballistic missile defense shield. So we have a situation today where Israel can't win this war. But here's the difference, because now you talked about the political dynamic in Russia and Ukraine. Let's talk about the political dynamic here. Israel has defeated itself. I believe that Israel has defeated itself on the international stage. Prior to October 7th, October 6th, the world was talking about normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab states, entering into these grand economic schemes, the India Middle East economic corridor that would link Mumbai with Dubai, with Haifa, going on to Greece. This fantasy world of somehow Israel being the center of this new economic relationship that would somehow serve to counter the Belts and Roads Initiative of China and whatever BRICS was offering, that this was going to balance everything out. It was so fanciful that Benjamin Netanyahu, instead of doing what he normally does at the United Nations General Assembly debate in September of last year, showing the cartoon of the Iranian bomb, saying they're right up here, 94%, it's all over. Hell, he didn't even bother with that one. He went, look at the map. We're going to conquer the world economically, and he showed a map that didn't have Palestine on it. It was all Israel, because that's the direction they were heading. On October 6th, nobody was talking about Palestine because everybody had given up on it. Then Hamas came out on October 7th and changed that equation. Today, 3 European nations just recognized the Palestinian state. I think it was Ireland. I think it was Norway. I think it was Spain was the third one. Some Hamas officials as well, including Yahya Sinwar and his chief negotiator. What a silly thing to do. Indict the negotiator. How do you think you're going to negotiate your out of this one? But the ICC's never been that smart to begin with. They indicted Vladimir Putin for, kidnapping children. And then it turned out 160 of the children he was accused of kidnapping turned out to be in Germany, which means the entire basis of, you don't see them doing the right thing, dropping the indictment. It's on the books. There's a political aspect to this. But my point is that Israel today is in a lot of trouble. It's lost the PR fight. Israel's normally very good on the PR. Now it's lost it. It's lost it in America. The campuses today. I just went to my daughter's graduation at Georgetown. In the middle of the Georgetown thing, the entire Middle East department of their master's degree in, Middle East affairs all got up and shouted free, free Palestine and marched out of the graduation. Similar actions in Harvard. This is going to continue through the summer and continue into next year. As long as Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people, it's now been recognized as genocide. There's no more excuse making for the Israelis. The world recognizes Israel for the horrific Zionist entity that it is, and you can't undo that. You can't put lipstick on that pig and make it look good. We all recognize it for the horror that it is. And that's a fatal wound to Israel. But there's another aspect that's even more fatal to Israel, and that is the economy. The damage that's been done to the Israeli economy by the Houthi effect of the blockade that the Houthi have put on is devastating for the Israeli economy. You have hundreds of thousands of Israelis displaced from their homes, whether in the north or along the Gaza corridor. They're not participating in the economy. That part of their economy shut down. Those people are homeless. That's costing money Israel doesn't have. This is a war that Israel can't afford. But the biggest thing is all the European and American and Canadian and Australian Jews that have gone to Israel in the past, millions of them, and they have their two passports. They like to go back to their homeland and visit, but they go to Israel because it's the land of milk and honey. They could sit there and go on Tel Aviv and grease themselves up and get the nice suntan and live the great life. That will never happen again. Israel is going to be a nation that's going to be in a perpetual state of conflict from now on because of the need for a Palestinian state. The conflict will be external and internal. The pressure that's going to be put on Israel now to stop the West Bank settlements is real. And in fact, eventually Israel will have to make a move on the West Bank settlements, which will cause a huge societal fracture in Israel. Israel will depopulate on its own. There's not going to be a new Holocaust. There's not going to be death camps. There's not going to be Arab armies marching on Israel and slaughtering the Israelis. No. Don't need it. Israel's going to depopulate itself because as soon as the quality of life factor becomes piss poor, I don't know if that's a technical term, but I'll throw it out there. The Israelis with the dual passports are going to go home. We already see hundreds of thousands have fled. I think some people have talked upwards of 500,000. 500,000 in a nation of 9 point some odd million. But what happens when that 500,000 becomes 1 million, then 2 million, 3 million? 1/3 of the population has left Israel, never to return because Israel's not a sustainable place to live. What happens when it becomes 50%? And remember, why that 9 million is an important number is how many Palestinian or Arab or Christian citizens are there in the area? Roughly the same. There's rough parity. But what happens when half of the Jews leave? Suddenly you have a demographic that is dominated by non-Jews. The concept of a Jewish homeland becomes politically unsustainable, especially in a world that condemns the Zionist entity for what it is. Israel has defeated itself. I think Israel is a problem that solves itself. And that's the beauty of what Hamas has done, is that Hamas has guaranteed that Israel can never win this war. And therefore, Israel needs a political solution, but the only political solution will be that which is dictated by the people who are supporting the creation of a Palestinian state. And if Israel won't support that, and current political environment in Israel is that they won't support it, then Israel continues to be one of the worst places in the world for a Jew to live. Not because of the Arabs, not because Israel sucks economically, socially. It is a failed state, and they'll leave. And then Israel self-destructs. I can envision that the state of Israel as we currently define it will not exist in 10 years. I confidently can make that assessment. We'll have to wait in 10 years and see if I'm right or wrong, but that's the trajectory I see right now. Look, the world has turned on Israel. Israel's been indicted. Israeli leaders have been indicted. Israel has, as a nation, been indicted in the International Court of Justice. It is a genocidal state. There's no way the world can allow Israel as it's currently configured to continue to exist. The fact that Lindsey Graham admits that America is a war criminal state, that our troops commit war crimes on a scope and scale that could justify a international criminal court indictment. He's not saying we're innocent. He's saying they're going to come after us next because we're guilty. We're the scum of the earth. And he's 100% right. And again, I'm a former Marine. I mean, once a Marine, always Marine. I love the Marine Corps. I cherish the time that I spent in the Marine Corps. And I believe that military service has the potential of being inherently honorable service and a necessary service in a dangerous world. And that war is something that should be avoided at all costs, because once you engage in war, horrible things happen. War is about man killing man. I mean, you can't get any more base than that or debased than that. It's murder. It's organized murder. I'm not here to justify war, glorify war, or somehow to make war acceptable. It's not. War is unacceptable. But if you got to do it, you got to do it. And you need hard men and hard women to do it. And they will forever be changed. And no matter how justified you might think your cause is, the moment you ask a human being to willfully take the life of another human being, you have forever changed that person. They will always be haunted by what has happened. And it changes societies. It changes nations. This is why we should avoid war. But if you're going to do it, you have to at least try to temper the animal that you have unleashed with a framework of international law, the law of war that says that, again, it's sickening, but this kind of killing's okay. This kind of killing's not okay. I mean, I've always scratched my head at that one, but, we have to do that. There has to be limits and boundaries. You can't indiscriminately kill civilians. You can't target cultural centers. You can't target hospitals. There has to be some sort of civilization, a veneer of civilization thrown over the animalistic urges that we've unleashed when we go to war. What Lindsey Graham is saying is, no, we don't have the rules. America can do whatever it wants to do. And I have to say with all of my heart, I have to watch my language because I was going to say something. But, you can go to hell, Lindsey Graham, you perfumed princess, you useless scum of the earth, you black-hearted. I mean, the man disgusts me. And the fact that the citizens of South Carolina continue to elect him and put him in office. He said something the other day. I don't know if you picked up on it. Is basically saying that Israel can use nuclear weapons against Gaza. And he said, we used it. We dropped it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, we did. And it was wrong, Lindsey. I don't know how you think you can possibly spin this into a positive thing. We didn't drop it to end the war against Japan. Hell, the Japanese were ready to surrender. We dropped it because we were trying to scare the Russians into not being so aggressive at Potsdam. That's what we're doing. We're trying to tell the Russians, don't make the move on Japan. We got this one under control. We can't, you need to slow down and swallow in Eastern Europe and slow down in the Pacific because we got the nuclear bomb and we can use it against you. And so we dropped it on Japan to prove a point to Russia. That is a war crime in itself. And I thought we learned our lesson. I thought people went, wow, we don't want to do that again. We don't want to engage in nuclear war. I was part of a process that said, let's get rid of nuclear weapons. I went to the Soviet Union, helped get rid of an entire category of nuclear weapons that were deemed to be inherently destabilizing to the world. The Russians came to America and got rid of our version of those weapons too. We started to reduce our strategic arms arsenals because we said nuclear war is bad. And Lindsey Graham, the world's most moronic senator, is sitting there saying not only did what we did against the Japanese was justified, but hell, the Israelis should be allowed to drop nuclear weapons on the Palestinians now because they can't beat them conventionally. Israel, that receives billions of dollars of American military aid, supposed to be the best army in the world, can't beat a bunch of sandal-wearing ragheads who are stuck in tunnels in Gaza. What's that say? I apologize to the Hamas people for calling you that. I didn't mean that personally. I'm trying to show how we demonize you, how we belittle you, how we don't give you any credibility, how we use terms to turn you into anything but the honorable resistance fighters that you are. But Israel, we prop up. I mean, hell, we got the American Congress talking about wanting to give Israeli soldiers the same protections under American law as National Guardsmen get. Because there's apparently 20,000 American citizens fighting in the IDF right now in Gaza, and they're running into problems because this war has gone on longer than people thought it would. And they're saying, I have a problem with my employer. My employer in America, where I'm a citizen, where I reside, is saying, hey, if you're not back here in time, we got to give your job to someone else. And so now the pro-Israeli lobby is going to the United States Congress and saying, you have to give them the same protections that you give American reservists, American National Guardsmen when they go off to war. No, you don't. This ain't Israel. We're America. We're not Israel. We don't do this, but we are. We've lost the script. And this is part of the change I see coming. I don't see the pro-Israeli lobby able to maintain this kind of focus, because think about what we just said there. The world has recognized Israel as a genocide machine, that its military is committing war crimes. The International Criminal Court just indicted the Minister of Defense and the Chief of Staff for war crimes committed by the Israeli military, which means 20,000 American citizens in the IDF are committing war crimes. And we're sitting here saying, well, let's reward these war criminals, these genocidal maniacs, by giving them job protections that we extend only to American citizens, to American National Guard. Oh, wait a minute, but Lindsey Graham just said that we're war criminals too. He didn't say, the ICC is bad because they would indict innocent Americans. Clearly, his statement was, we commit the same war crimes that Israel does, and if we allow ICC to indict Israel, they'll indict us too. I tell you what, we have lost our moral compass as a nation. Why we tolerate Lindsey Graham making these statements, why he isn't drummed out of the Senate. Where are the other senators standing up and saying, sit down and shut up? You're a war criminal. We don't believe in that. We don't advocate that. And yet they sit there and they let him say what he says, because many of them believe the same things he believes. We need to purge the U.S. Senate of this kind of monstrosity, the Lindsey Grahams of the world. There needs to be change, and the change will come. I mean, God bless the students of America for standing up and fighting the fight that nobody else was willing to fight. They are the role model of America today. I used to make fun of them all the time. I used to say that, it's a lost generation. They don't believe in anything. They don't stand for anything. And they just threw that back in my face and said, no, we believe in something. We're willing to fight for this. And I respect them for that. And I hope that they're able to turn the nation on a dime and get us all to collectively agree that opposing genocide is the right thing to do.